G'day, this is Expand the Phantom Podcast. Our website is chroniclechamber.com and you can subscribe to our podcast via YouTube or through your favourite podcast app. My name is Jermayn. Hello, Marcelo. How are you?
Good, mate. How are you, Jermaine? It's good to be here.
Very good. Thank you for joining us. So today we will be talking to Marcelo Baez. First of all, is that how we pronounce the name, or have we totally butchered it in every single podcast we have done?
No, it's Marcelo Baez. That's right. It's Marcelo. It's not Marcello. If it was Marcello, it'd be spelled double L. So if it's Marcelo, it's only one L. Yeah.
There
So that's how
you
you know it.
go. All right, I did
Yeah.
not know that. So,
hmm
um, So welcome. So you've done a couple of Phantom covers and you've done a Phantom story. And we've had quite a few fans on the podcast, but also just in general chit chat that have talked about some of your covers and how they've really enjoyed it. So we thought we'll get you on and we'll learn a little bit more about you. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's cool. Appreciate it.
All right. So kind of start us off. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and then we can just kind of go from there.
Sure. Okay. I grew. Well, I my parents immigrated to Australia in the 70s. So I came here when I was about 3 or 4 years old. I grew up in Wollongong, down the coast in Dapto. And basically, I went to school around here, and later on, once I left school, I went to learn graphic design. So graphic design was the thing that I thought I could do to make some money it was kind of a creative thing, and it seemed like the sensible thing, graphic design. So yeah, so I thought I wasn't sure what it exactly it entailed, and I remember being in like maths class and geography class drawing Ninja Turtles, thinking, "Oh yeah, this is cool," and I love doing that. And so I decided to do graphic design because I heard it was a sensible thing to do for a creative person, and I started studying up in Sydney. I went to Randwick College of Graphic Design up there, which is now the Enmore College, and I learned a lot about graphic design. I really enjoyed it. I mean, it was a really good course, but I was straight out of school, so it was a big learning curve for me. And it was a steep learning curve too, because a lot of the students that were there, some of them were mature age students, and I really learned a lot of stuff really quickly about how ordinary my stuff was. Like, you kind of think, oh, yeah, I'm pretty good, when you're the best drawer in the class kind of thing, and then you go, you meet all these really good artists. It was quite intimidating, but it was good. It was a good learning curve, and I'm glad I did it, and I learned a lot of things. Being a graphic designer for a long time, that's definitely helped me as a professional illustrator. And yeah, so it was a really really good thing. And at the same time, I was still drawing comics for myself. I mean, I should say, I wasn't drawing comics. I was drawing for myself and like just sketching a lot and drawing. But I really didn't think that I'd be able to do or be able to make a living as an illustrator at the time.
Yeah.
I was always reading a lot of trade magazines and things like that, learning about things because there was no internet back then. So it was all, magazines and stuff.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
remember just learning about how hard it was. And you basically, you had to live in New York to pretty much have a comic book job and all this kind of stuff. But I had a very romantic view of what I thought it was going to be, like most young people do. Um, you think,
So
oh, it's got to be
yeah.
good, and you want to be, you know, this and that. But yeah,
So you make mention about your parents immigrating. For the what country was that from?
oh, Chile in South
Chile.
America.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
And so how did your parents, what did your parents think about the desire to be an illustrator? Because I see from where I live over here in Perth, there's a lot of Indians, and they all have to become doctors and lawyers and
Oh, yeah, yeah,
engineers
yeah. I
and
know what you
stuff
mean.
like that. So was that the same for you, where you were trying to be pushed into a more credible
Uh,
career, or were they kind of cool with
oh,
that?
yeah, yeah. I know what you mean. Actually, well, I guess because I got into graphic design to start off with. And they knew I was very creative because I thought I kind of they realized. I mean, they also encouraged me a lot. Like I'm really lucky. I was really encouraged to stick to creative things and to do creative things. Like my dad was an amateur. Like he was a steel worker, but he was an amateur photographer for a lot of his life, and he just loved. He was just an art photographer basically, and he was a very arty guy, and he used to dabble in watercolors for a little bit, but he was mostly a photographer. Like he had his own darkroom in the garage,
Oh
so he
wow.
tried to encourage me to do some photography and stuff as well. So that was really cool. And I remember because for years and years, Dad was like banging into my head like photographic concepts and things about you know like composition
Yep.
and like shading and light and dark and what makes a good balanced photograph. When really, when you think about it, what makes a good balanced piece of artwork is the same thing as what makes a good photograph. A piece of art is a piece of art, right? When you're talking like
Yes.
two-dimensional, I guess. So like that was like Dad was always drumming that stuff into me, and like I guess subconsciously it was sinking in because I felt like I didn't get the hang of I was trying to learn how to use an SLR camera, and my dad had been teaching me and he'd been showing me stuff, but I wasn't like getting it. I didn't think I was getting it. And then I remember in high school in year 11, I got the chance to choose photography as an elective. And I remember thinking, oh, this might be good. And I thought Dad might be able to help me. But the weird thing was, I don't know what happened. Something, when something clicks in your brain when you've been hammering at something for so many years and you think, oh, I'm not getting it. And then I went to photography class at high school and something clicked. And it was like, like Neo in the Matrix when he finally, at the end, when he sees everything, he sees what the truth is. And I just got it. I got everything. And it was weird. And I got top of the class. I completely understood how to balance light on the camera and all the shutter speed stuff, the things that used to confuse me for so many years. So yeah, Dad was really encouraging like that with like creative stuff. And yeah, that definitely helped. And my mum was very, like my mum, she was very arty in the sense that she liked a lot of crafty things. She was very crafty, my mum. Mum was always like making
Awesome.
things and fixing things and I remember when I used to have like coloring and things to do, she'd like join in and like, muck around with me and coloring with me and show me like little techniques that I could do here and there just for fun. So yeah, they
Oh,
were
no,
very
that's good.
encouraging. I was very lucky. Yeah, I was very lucky.
So growing up in the 70s in country New South Wales, what comics did you devour? Was the Phantom one of them?
No, no. Here's the weird thing about the fan. Like I was a Marvel zombie. Like what
Yeah.
Marvel zombie meant back in the day was you loved Marvel comics, right? So I just loved Marvel comics. I loved American comics. I was obsessed with American comics. I was always into adventure stuff. Not so much funny stuff. Like my dad used to, because my dad did talk about like comics from the homeland, and basically they had American comics translated into Spanish. So they were reading like Donald Duck, Mandrake. Actually, the Phantom. It's funny because I think my mum used to read the Phantom and Mandrake. They're the comics that mum remembers when I talk to mum about comics. And my dad used to talk about Donald Duck and things like that. So they used to, I think what happened was a lot of the American comics that get translated by the Mexicans and so they were published, sorry, they must have been printed in Mexico, that Mexican editions, and then they were sent around South America.
Mm,
So they were the Spanish versions that a lot of South Americans used to read. I think they were actually printed
mm.
in Mexico.
Yeah, I've actually got a couple of Chile Phantom comics in my collection.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. What are
Yeah,
they
yeah.
actually like printed in Chile?
Yeah, and distributed in Chile and stuff like that.
Oh,
So,
wow. Okay. What year are they? Like, are they modern or?
you're looking at probably about the 60s, 70s.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Cool. Well, the
So,
stuff that my parents used to talk about, so they would have been in the 50s and late 40s, the stuff that my mum and dad were reading. So, yeah. But yeah. So yeah, like I said, I was a Marvel zombie. And I just read, yeah, I just love that stuff. On and off, like when I was younger, I remember reading it. My cousins, I was lucky because my cousins lived here too. And they lived a few suburbs away. So when we go to visit, they were at the time, I think Star Wars hit. So it must have been 1978, 79. And they bought a lot of Marvel Star Wars comics, and we were just insane for that. Like everyone was at that age, like my generation. Like when Star Wars hit, we just all went crazy. Us kids, it couldn't have come at a better time. Like I was at the perfect age for it, and so were my
yeah.
cousins. So yeah, we devoured a lot of Star Wars related comics and things like that. Yeah.
Awesome. So, just backtracking a little bit, you talked about like your art degree, how you went into graphic design. Um, when did you start doing work for illustration or comics? Like, what was your pathway into that part of your career?
Well, a few things happened. So I once I got once I graduated, so I got my graphic design degree. Um, I I didn't want to get a job up in Sydney because it's a bit of a commute from Wollongong to Sydney. Like it's an hour and a half. And the thing about Wollongong to Sydney is that that's what most people do. You commute to Sydney for the big jobs. I mean, there are good jobs around here, but they're hard to find. And at the time, I was really lucky because I got a job at a place that did corporate graphics here in Wollongong. So I didn't have to travel far, which was really good. And again, it was a really steep learning curve. And it felt really weird because I remember starting the graphic design job where they designed a lot of corporate brochures, like, and they dumped a lot of responsibility on me. And I was pretty young. I think I was only like about 18, 19.
Yeah,
I
well,
ended up doing like annual reports and things like that, like real high-end corporate stuff. And again, it was a steep learning curve. And the weird thing was, I remember thinking to myself, man, like all that training that I did at graphic design, I felt like it didn't help anything at all because I felt like I was learning all over again. It was
yeah,
weird. It's just one of those things where it wasn't until I was there, I was at this company for about maybe 3 years or so. And it wasn't by the third year where I thought, oh no, hang on, my training has helped. But at the beginning, I just felt like I was drowning, like I was just like treading water and trying to stay alive in this job. It was just so intense. And the pressure, like the deadlines. I mean, that's just part of what you do as a creative professional, when you got to get things done on time. I learned about, working fast, and graphic design really kind of forces you to, um, get things done on time because you got a client, you got to get things, into the client at certain times, you got to get it to the printer. So I learned those valuable things that I learned were like dealing with other suppliers, like obviously a printer, which is really important. Like the internet had just started, I think, when I got my job. I remember we had a dial-up system where we were able to email um, large documents, finished to a printer to get them to send us artwork, better to set up artwork. Like now you do it all digitally, completely digitally. But before we'd get it, you'd do a part of it digitally, then they'd print it out and then you'd paste it up and then they'd scan it in again. And then you work with a photographer, with a professional photographer. And yeah, so there was a lot of liaising, dealing with different people. So it taught me a lot of valuable lessons about dealing with clients, dealing with suppliers, working with other creatives like photographers. I got a chance to work with some illustrators as well. Um, and then so that job led to, then I left that job and I got a really good job up in Sydney working for a big newspaper up in Sydney. And again, because I felt like a small country boy going to the city, but the weird thing was I trained so hard at this job that my skills were better than I thought they were. So I had a pick of a few jobs that I went for when I was in the big smoke up in Sydney. And I got this job at the newspaper, and it was a really good fit for me. Like I really enjoyed it. Photoshop was a big thing back then, like learning Photoshop.
yep.
And I remember I was really like I was determined to learn how to like color my own comics because at the time I was dabbling in trying to learn how to, ink my own stuff and then like scan it into a computer. And I was really like there was a lot of cool graphic design magazines that had how to color stuff in Photoshop, had really advanced stuff, like hard to find stuff. Like now you can find it anywhere on the internet, but these magazines, these trade magazines were like amazing. So I'd photocopy these instructions and keep them and create a little folio of stuff of how to do stuff in Photoshop.
So
And that
showing
yeah,
our age here, what was the
yeah.
earliest version of Photoshop that you used?
Oh yeah, this will definitely show my age. Well, let put it this way. I remember learning in a version that didn't have layers.
Okay.
There was no
Okay. Wow.
layers. If you can imagine Photoshop that
Yeah.
didn't have layers. And I remember as soon as I started the job up in Sydney, they introduced a version, the first Photoshop version with layers, which was, I think, was version 3.
Yeah.
And it
Because
blew our
that's the
minds.
version
Like,
that I started on. Because
do you
I did a
remember? Do you
graphic.
remember version 3?
Yeah, I did a
Yeah,
graphic design course as well, and yeah, I
yeah.
started on Photoshop 3.
Well, we started on 2.5. So
Yeah,
at
wow.
school, I remember at school we we're learning, and here's a funny thing. This is hilarious because I remember at school thinking, like, at graphic design school, computers were so new that computers were a separate class to all the other
Mm.
subjects. Okay, so the great thing was there was a lot of hands-on stuff that I learned. At the time, I thought this stuff's useless, but it's so funny because ironically, like if you jump forward to me learning to ink on paper, I've used so many of those skills that I learned as a graphic designer because we learnt lettering by hand. We
Yep.
learnt how to like use a brush properly and all this stuff. But all these skills at the time I thought like, oh, they're useless. But at the same time, I hated computer class. I remember thinking, God, I hope computers aren't a big part of this thing. Like that was my stupid thought. I remember thinking, I hope computers aren't a big part of this graphic design thing. And I hated computers. It took me, and I'm so grateful that eventually, obviously a few years later, I was totally into it. And I even actually taught basic Photoshop um, when I started working up in Sydney because I was that proficient at it. I didn't realize I was that good at it. I thought everyone was really like, because I was so
Yeah, yeah.
nervous about this job up in Sydney that my skills, I was really training hard. And plus, I was lucky that my brother-in-law, who was also a graphic designer, we used to share tips with each other. So we'd call each other up. Oh, I just learned how to do this, and he'd say, "Oh, I learned how to do that," and we'd talk ourselves, over the phone, instruct each other. And sometimes I go over to his place, or he'd come out to my place, and he'd show me stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah, so stuff like that, I learned like that. So I ended up teaching some basic Photoshop while I was working at the newspaper as well. So some people would say to me, "Oh, go ask Marcelo." So eventually, I'd do like these mini classes at work, just to get people all up to speed on how to do things. And yeah, I was actually quite. I mean, I still know how to use Photoshop, but I don't use it quite as much as I used to. I used to pride myself in being like the Photoshop king back in the day, but now I'm just
You made mention that you were using Photoshop for your coloring of your comics and all that. So is this around the time that you were doing your own comics?
what happened was when I was still working down here in Sydney in that job I talked about, that corporate job I had, I entered a competition, a comic competition at what used to be OzCon. That used to be the big
Yep.
Comic Con up in Sydney. And OzCon had a competition where they had a script, and they said, and this, no, I entered two competitions. The first one was I think you just had to do a comic page. That was it. I remember. And I entered it and I did a Spider-Man page and I took it in. They put it up on these big display things, and we went to the convention. I was pretty young.
So
I
we're
think I
talking
was
about
19
90s
or maybe
here,
20.
or is
Yes,
this the
yes, it must be
80s?
early 90s, early 90s.
Yep.
Yeah, so it must be 93, 94, I'm gonna say. Actually, probably 94. Yes, and yeah, so I did this Spider-Man page in black and white. Um, put it up, and it did. I thought to myself, oh, yeah, looks okay. I thought I'd be happy if if someone just says something nice about it. But I went into the presentation, and I'm sitting there and thinking, oh, okay, see what happens. And I didn't get third prize, and I got really disappointed. I thought, damn, I thought for sure I'd get third. I didn't get second. I thought, that's it, I'm out. But I got first prize, and that
Oh
was
wow.
crazy. So that was very encouraging. So for me, that really that encouraged me a lot. And then a couple of years later, I did the same thing again. I entered. They had another competition. I skipped a year, and then the following year they did another one. And at this stage, I should have pulled my finger out and just been doing my own comics. But I just thought I'll enter another competition. And this time they had a script, a two-page script, and it was a Hawkman story, which I wasn't a big fan of Hawkman, but I thought whatever, I'll have a go. And I did a two-page thing, and the prize was presented by Jim Lee, if you can believe it. He came to Australia for an AusCon, which was at Centrepoint. It used to be at Centrepoint in Sydney, so in the middle of the city. And it was Jim Lee, and I was at that stage I was a massive X-Men fan, so I was crazy about X-Men and Jim Lee. And Jim Lee, yeah, so he's presenting the awards, and I was like, I didn't get third, I didn't get second, and I was thinking, there's no way I'm going to get first, and I got first prize, and I was like, oh my God. And so I went and I shook Jim Lee's hand, but it just felt like I was in such a daze and I couldn't believe it was happening. And I got a voucher and a thing and shook his hand and I went back to my seat and I was like, oh my God, I really got to take this comic thing a bit more seriously. So I felt like, okay, all right, I've got to do my own thing. And that kind of led to me self-publishing, making my own comic book around the mid 90s. Oh no, that was later than that because I stuffed around for a bit. So it would have been the late 90s. I created my own comic, self-published it, I had a friend while I was working in the, so by this stage I was working at the newspaper in Sydney, and I had a friend who he was my, I was the graphic designer. He was the art director, the assistant art director. And he was a bit of a real arty all-rounder guy. And he used to print his own black and white magazines. And he made these really cool black and white magazines. And he knew a printer that used to print. And this was back in the day when digital printing wasn't a big thing. And he knew this guy that digital printed black and white magazines with a color cover. And he really just wanted to make his own cool graphic design magazine. And he made these cool little, like, I guess you'd call them zines, but they were more like upmarket because he was a good graphic designer. He knew what he was doing. And yeah, it was black and white. And the finished product was so cool to me. I just thought, wow, this looks amazing. I said, it must have cost you a fortune. And he said, no, it didn't, because I could print as little, he said he could print as little as 50 or less. And I said to him, how? I said, because back then everything was offset printing. So I don't know
Yeah.
if your listeners know the difference, like if your young readers know the difference, like offset printing, you'd have to print a minimum of like 1,000 to make your money back kind of thing. And he said he could print 50, and it blew my mind. And that kind of gave me the idea for I'm going to try and do my own comic, and I'm going to print it, and I'm going to print it black and white with a color cover. And because I was a graphic designer, I had those skills to make it look good, as in like visually, like the package look good and feel like a proper comic. So I just wanted it to look professional. I couldn't stand the idea of spending all this time on pages and then the finished product doesn't look like a finished, good, finished professional product. So yeah, and eventually I did that. It was called Diablo, and it was just like this fantasy story that I was kind of writing on the fly. I really didn't have much of a plan for it, and I ended up making about 4 issues. The first issue got some attention. We won a little prize at a convention, which was nice because we did it as a flip book with a friend of mine. My friend, his name's Frank Kennedy. He made his own detective comic on the flip side, and on the flip side of mine, so we had like a flip book. Mine was Diablo, and his was this detective um, comic. And yeah, we won a little prize at a convention up in Sydney again. And I thought, oh, this is cool. We're gonna keep doing this. And Frank pulled out. Frank goes, I don't want to do this anymore. It's too much work. And I'm like, I can't do this on my own. I was like freaking out. But I eventually, thought, oh, I can do it on my own. But my initial thought was, oh, I'm out too. I thought, no, this is too much work. But Frank goes, no, you should still do it. So I did it. And yeah, so that kind of helped me because it was so much work. I was commuting from here to Sydney, and it's an hour and a half trip each way. So my wife was the one that convinced me to you should draw on the train. She said draw on the train. I thought I can't draw in public. That's embarrassing. Well, that's just too much. But but that's what I had to do. So I made the most of that hour and a half because I used to either sleep or read on the train or listen to music and pass out. And I thought, no, I'm going to try and draw. So I ended up sketching and thumbnailing a lot of stuff on the train.
Mm.
And then I'd come home late at night after a day's work and I'd work on this comic and the stuff you can do when you're in your 20s, right? You've got the energy
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do
yeah.
that kind of stuff. And you should do that when you're in your 20s, break your back for this stuff. You have to. Um, yeah, so I made about 4 issues. I did 3 issues and then I did a last issue. The last one's probably the one I'm happiest with. Again, every page was like a learning curve for me. I was just, you know, trying to get better and making sure the product looked good. Um, so that really helped. That gave me a lot of confidence with the comics, and it got me noticed. I got noticed in the local comics community. There started to be the internet. They had message boards, and on message boards, I used to post stuff on message boards back then, and a lot of people were really encouraging. Again, they really liked it, so I thought, okay, well, I'll keep making it and see how it goes. And I mean, I was just happy to break even because I was so nervous about spending all that money on printing. Again, I was in my early 20s, so I didn't have that much money, and I didn't want to like embarrass myself or like come back to my wife and go, "Oh, I just spent $500 on printing and I'm never getting the money back," kind of thing. But no, it was good. I ended up breaking even on most of the stuff, which was good. Like I actually sold out of all my issue ones and all my issue twos. I think I've got a few issue threes left in the garage. The fourth one's nearly sold out. The fourth one, because it was a standalone, that was nearly gone too. The third issue just kind of didn't sell much, but yeah, and that got me noticed. Oh, so at the same time, I had a friend. There was a comic shop here in Wollongong, the Phantom Zone. They used to have. They're from Sydney, but they had a stall down here, a
Yep.
franchise down here in Wollongong. and I met a friend there. I made a friend with a guy that worked there, and he had a brother who was a big time illustrator in New York, and he then went um, over to New York, and he got a job at an agency in New York, and he got in touch with me via email because by that stage email started, and I was just excited to get an email from overseas, and that was so funny because that was the first email I ever received from a person overseas, and he wrote back to me, and I said, I just sent this like a second ago. And he goes, yeah, I know it's email. And then we kept writing like a conversation. And he goes, get over it. Just look, I got to tell you something. It's like I was just blown away. But you're in New York, and how can you be receiving this? I was just so like blown away by the technology at the time. And he said to me, he said, why don't you send some of your work over to the agency? We'll see what the other people that own the company think of your work. And I was like, okay. So I sent my work, and they said, oh, they thought your stuff was okay, but maybe you're not ready yet. And I was like, oh God, all right, great. So I thought this was going to be a way in for me to do some illustration work. Um, so I didn't get anywhere. And then a couple of years later, I was still working on my own stuff. I was still working in Sydney, so I was commuting up to Sydney. And eventually, at the newspaper where I worked, I ended up dabbling, doing a few little one-off illustration pieces here and there for a few people that I knew in different departments. So that was really cool. Like that really helped me, and I saw some of my first illustrations in print in the newspaper, and for a few magazines. I had a few contacts for a few magazines in the area like local rags. And they were really cool. So I did a few little spot illustrations. And the cool thing about that work is they used to pay really well. So you do like a little spot illustration in a magazine. Um, and it was like, oh, back then it was like maybe $300 or $400 for a single illustration
Yeah,
piece.
okay.
Um, so they were really good gigs to get. So I was doing that on the side as well as working full time and commuting, trying to make my own comics. And and then a friend of mine, illustrator, who's a very good illustrator, Craig Phillips, we kind of came up together, and he actually worked at the same company, the graphic design company, and he ended up traveling around the world and doing other stuff, and then he ended up he became more of a children's book illustrator, but he still loved comics. He was trying to get into comics, and but he said to me, he got in with the agency in New York that our friend used to run the comic shop here in Wollongong. And he said to me then, he said, you should send your work to Simon again. And I was like, oh man, I did that a few years ago. And he's told me to not to bother. He said, just wait. He said, no, no, he works a lot cooler now. I said, send your new work. So I was like, oh yeah, all right, I will. So I sent it thinking, oh yeah, it's probably a waste of time. But then I got an email back from New York, and they said, yeah, this works really cool. They said they'd like to represent me. Um, so I was like, oh wow, that's cool. So I ended up doing quite a lot of like kids books, like for educational kids books for the American market. Again, that was a steep learning curve for me because like learning to draw fast, which was
Mm.
rough. Like, it's really hard because it was a lot. There was volumes of work you had to do too. So you might get 20 to 50 illustrations. And it really taught me to organize myself as an illustrator because I thought I was already organized as a graphic designer, but it's totally different. It's a different mindset, I guess, because the labor that's involved in illustration compared to graphic design. Like graphic design, you
Yeah.
can move a lot faster with certain things. Or I could anyway. I could personally could move a lot faster as a graphic designer at the time. Yeah, so I ended up um doing they sent me a lot of educational work, but I was still working up in Sydney. And then they sent me it was funny because I was getting like a bit down with the work I was doing. Because it was just boring. Like the educational stuff got really dull for me. The money was okay, but it just got really dull. And I remember thinking, oh, this is so boring. And I thought one weekend I just thought I just want to draw something for myself. And that's what I wasn't doing, which was a big mistake as an artist. Even when you're a professional artist, when I teach students, I tell them, look, no matter what you're working on, you've got to work on your own stuff. And that's what I wasn't doing. I wasn't working on my own stuff because I was so caught up, making money, doing illustration stuff for other people and companies. And then at the one weekend, I just remember spending a Sunday drawing like this cool Wolverine print. I was getting into Japanese woodblock prints like Hokusai and stuff like that, and I wanted to do my own version of like a Wolverine, like Hokusai kind of thing. And I did it for fun. And then I remember thinking, oh, this turned out pretty good. And then I put it on my blog at the time. And I remember a few months later, I got an email, and I thought this email was a joke. I got an email from Marvel, and they said, "Oh, we saw you, Wolverine. We'd like you to do a thing for us." It was Marvel Upper Deck. They do the prints and the trading cards and stuff. And I was like, and I waited. I didn't reply straight away because I thought, "Are my friends like playing a trick on me?" And then I thought, "Oh, this can't be real." So then I remember I got online and I looked up the art director's name, and I found it turned out he was legit. He was the real deal. So I was like, holy crap, I better act serious. So quickly replied to him. I said, yeah, I'd be happy to blah blah blah. And I said, I have an agent in New York. And it's probably best that you get in touch with them, blah blah blah. So I sent that off, and my agent was happy because they were like, oh cool, you got a job with Marvel. And I was like, yeah, I'm stoked. So yeah, so I did I did some work for Marvel, which was mind blowing for me. It was just really, really
Mm.
cool. The fact that they
And
got in
what
touch with
time
me
was
too.
this? What years are we talking about with the upper deck?
Uh, the upper deck stuff. Actually, you know what? I think I skipped a year. I skipped a bit of stuff. I jumped forward because that was 2000 and I think that was 2012-ish,
Okay.
2010, I think.
Yep.
Um, because I did do a job for Marvel before that that my agent got for me, and there used to be a TV show called Marvel Superhero Squad. And there was like they look like Smurfs. They look like those cute, like cutesy, chibi kind of Marvel
Yep.
characters. And again, because remember it was like educational kid stuff I used to draw. So it was funny because I remember I got this from my agent, and this was must have been in 2005-ish, maybe, or 2007. And my agent said, "Oh, we got you a job from Marvel," and I was like, "Oh my God, this is it!" I was so stoked. And they said, "Oh, it's a kid's book." I was like, "Oh, okay." And they said, "Oh, and this is the style." And they sent me the style sheet, and I went, "They look like Smurfs." I was like, "What is this?" And they said, "Oh, no, it's called Marvel Superhero Squad, and there's a TV show, and they want you to do one of the books." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So, yeah, again, because I had the skills, I knew how to, adapt my style to make it work. And yeah, it was a really cool job. Like it was a fun job. Again, oh man, it threw me in the deep end because I had to work really fast, and I wanted to get the job. Obviously, I wanted the job to look really good. I was learning some new digital techniques at the time. I got my first Wacom tablet thing, so that was, yeah, I remember doing that kind of stuff. I was trying to do it completely digitally, but I did it mostly digitally. But I did the artwork, I inked it, and I did the layouts digitally, and then I did the other thing by inks by hand, and then scanned them, colored them in Photoshop. It was a bit of mucking around, but it was good. Yeah, but the
Hmm.
other job I got, the one I got years later, which was that Japanese style one, that was really cool because that led to even more work through Marvel Upper Deck, and I ended up doing a set of Avengers prints for Marvel, based on the Wolverine one that I did as well. So that was really, really cool. Yeah.
Awesome. And so, not long after this, you did your first cover for the Phantom, which was back in 2016. How did you get the
Uh,
job for the?
well, I knew Glenn Ford,
Yep.
because Glenn Ford he was always really nice to me. Like I remember I used to see him at shows, and I remember early on, again, when I used to take my portfolio to conventions and stuff, um, Glenn was really, really took a lot of time to go through my stuff. And he was good because he didn't mince words. He'd tell you what was wrong with your art, what needed work. But he was also very encouraging. Like Glenn was really, really cool. I think I saw him at a show, and he may have mentioned something about doing something, like doing a cover. And I thought, wow. I said, yeah, I'd be up for that. So, and I don't think I heard back from him for a while, and I kind of forgot about it. And then I got an email out of the blue, and he said, "Oh, look, can you do this cover?" The turnaround was like really insane. But I went, yes, like I'd never say no because I don't think I've done a lot of kids' book covers at the time. So I felt pretty confident about doing cover work, but I don't think I'd actually done a comic book cover, to be honest. I think it might be my first actual. comic
Oh,
book
okay.
cover,
Well,
other than my own
mm.
creator own stuff. And I may have done other bits that I can't remember now, but I'm pretty sure it's my first proper comic book cover, which was the first
And
Phantom cover.
and this is
Yeah.
issue 1766, of course, which is the art collector.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And the only thing I regret about that cover is I drew it all digitally. And I only drew it all digitally because I was that pressed for time. And then I remember around that stage, with what I was doing, I just remember thinking, all right, if it's stuff that I could resell or something I'm going to be proud of, I want to
Mm.
do it on paper. And I thought, a comic book cover, you want to do it on paper, right? But I just didn't have time. I had a lot of stuff on, and I didn't want to let Glenn down and say no. But yeah, but I was pretty happy how it turned out because I really wanted to do something different. I thought if I've learned anything about being an illustrator is it's not about being the best. It's about trying to make your mark and do something that just twists things a little bit. You look at things from a slightly different angle, and I thought
Mm.
as a graphic designer too, I love designy covers. I love things that are got a bit of a almost like a movie poster, I guess.
Yeah.
And I like things that are a bit avant-garde and a bit, odd. Um, so yeah, that's what encouraged me to do the Phantom cover the way I did it.
Mm. One thing that I've noticed with your covers, I think all of them, bar maybe the latest one, 1987, is they've got like shapes and different tones. Like for instance, with the art collector, it's got I'm going to get it wrong. What's the spiral cord?
The
Um,
man is he's called Vitruvian Man. Is that
yeah,
is the Vitruvian Man with where it's
with
the Phantom?
the
He's the
yeah
Da
with the
Vinci.
multiple arms.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah,
Vitruvian
yeah.
Man. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then it almost looks like it's kind of got a like the seashell effect, which kind of
Oh
draws your
yeah, yeah,
eyes.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
kind of got that effect. Then with
Golden
your
spiral. Yeah,
yeah, and then with the Orient Express one, it's got like the lady's got different shades with it and
yeah,
stuff like that as well. And then with your Enter the Phantom one, which was Matt Kime's story, it's got the circle effect as well.
yeah,
So I've just
yeah,
when you were telling us about your graphic design background, I was like, that's I could kind of pick that up now when you made mention of
yeah,
that because there's all those little elements that is more than just a couple of images randomly placed on a thing. There's a flow to the way you've done things. It draws your eyes, like even with the crocodile, like how you've got the crocodile going from the front to the back cover, and there's definitely a sense behind the way you've got your motion and your colors and stuff like that.
Oh, thanks, Jermaine. Like, I appreciate you noticing all this stuff. Like, yeah, I mean, that's you pretty much, hit the nail on the head. Like I said, I think of stuff as graphic design. I'm attracted to those kinds of graphic design covers myself. I'm a big fan of, I don't know if you know the artist, the comic book artist, Dave Johnson. He
Yep.
did a lot of the covers for 100 Bullets, and he's done stuff. He's drawn covers for everyone, and he's won multiple awards for his covers. And I love his sensibility and his draftsmanship too, because he's a really good illustrator in general. But and again, to myself, I think to stand out. Again, I want to do something that's interesting for me, and obviously,
Yep.
if you're excited about it, it shows, hopefully. And that's what I like to do. So I like to really work it out as a puzzle piece, um and I'm just attracted to that strong kind of graphic design work. That again, and it feels a little bit like a movie poster as well, like an old movie poster.
Mm,
Uh, and and what I love about the Phantom, like the elements and the that kind of pulpy thing about the Phantom is it's got all the cool stuff. You know what I mean? There's so many cool visual elements that happen in a proper adventure comic like the Phantom. And so there's so many cool like elements that I can throw in there. And I love old-fashioned stuff. I can't believe I'm saying this one because I never used to. I used to never into old-fashioned stuff, but now I really appreciate like like the old-fashioned things, like the medieval castles, and uh, even though they're a pain to draw, and like elements like the chains and the junk, that the Chinese junk that was in it, and explosions, obviously, all cool things like that. But I really
Mm.
like, so I'm yeah, I'm grateful to be able to work on that kind of stuff because it's a lot of fun. And yeah, and again, like I don't think, again, I don't, you got to play to your strengths, and I don't think I'm the greatest drafts person in the world, but I'm a pretty good designer, so I think to myself, all right, I've got to work off my strengths and make a cover that's gonna pop in a way. I mean, all covers need to pop really, but um, yeah, but I think using my graphic design skills to make things pop, especially with the Phantom, yeah, it tends to work really
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed with your Matt Kimes cover as well is that there's multiple skulls throughout, whether it's the
Oh,
smoke, the
I
water.
I put so many skulls in that, and I wanted to have a competition. Like, could anyone pick how many skulls I put in it? Because I actually hid two really hard to find skulls. I can't remember now where I put them. That's how well I hit them. But I
All
remember
right.
I
Well,
put that many
what we
skulls.
might do is we'll while this podcast is on, we'll have the front and the back,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and then
You're
we'll
gonna
put
need
it
a
also
high-res
on the social.
file. You're gonna need a
Okay.
high-res file because there's some that like they might be hard to find, you know.
All
But
right.
there is.
Well, we might have to get that high res file off you, and then we'll
All right, all right,
see how many the fans can find, and
all
then
right, all
we
right,
can see if we're right or wrong.
all right. Cool, cool.
Because
Because
I remember
yeah.
we talked about it when we reviewed the comic about, and we were actually we were reviewing the comic and we were looking at the front cover and we were counting how many we had. I think,
Did you guys have a physical copy?
yeah, I don't
All
have one
right.
with me now, but
No, no, that's
yeah,
cool. That's cool.
yeah, but we would have definitely found. I reckon there would have at least been double digits.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because I had and I remember that because I actually I've got the original art here as
Wow.
the original, and like I actually added, even though there's quite a few skulls, like with the black and white, I actually added quite a few in color as well. So that's a bit of a clue as to how many more you'll probably find that aren't on the
Mm.
original art, but they're on the digital file. Because I ended up drawing a few. I think they're in the flame somewhere. Might be giving away too much there, but there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Awesome. Awesome.
yeah.
Now, so you've just showed us, for those who are on the audio only, you just showed us the original art for the story, which is 1969 with the Frew number.
Yep.
Now, the question that I'm going to be getting, so we have to make sure we ask that, is do you have original art for all of these other covers, bar the first one? Or have you sold many of them?
Ye-
Are you selling them?
I'm willing to sell them. I am willing to sell them, but I'm selling them for a bit of a ridiculous price. So if people want to get in touch with me, yeah, they might be
Yep.
disappointed as to how expensive they are, but I'd rather hold on to them and
Yep.
and sell them for a high price. But yeah, I am willing to sell them for the right price. I'll definitely sell them, and I do have I've got all of them. Like, again, except for the first one, which again I'm disappointed I didn't draw it. You know, I drew it all digitally, which was again more for speed's sake, for getting it done on time and not
Mm.
letting Glenn down. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, it is worth making mention that 1969, which is the original art that you just showed us, that was actually voted as the best cover by the fans in by for Frew in 2024.
Was
So,
it?
yeah, it was.
Oh wow, cool. I didn't
So
know that.
there's another
I
reason
thought
to
it was the
purchase.
interior that got voted for the best issue.
No, so the comic got the story got voted best, and so did the cover.
Oh wow. Oh, that's cool. Thank you, Phantom fans. That's awesome.
Hmm.
I didn't know that.
Now,
That's really cool.
what's actually interesting is your first cover, which we talked about, was in 2016, but then we didn't see you until 2021 again.
I know.
What
I
was the
just
reason for 5 years? Did Glenn forget your phone number or?
Glenn forgot me. He just forgot all about me, and he just thought I just fell off the side of the planet, and he forgot me. No, but I actually, in all honesty, I did get a lot of I did get a lot of work in the interim, like not obviously not Phantom stuff, but I did get a lot of other stuff. But I wouldn't have said no to Glenn. So put it that way. I try to. I don't think I've ever said no to Glenn stuff because I've done
Yeah.
the Phantom Folio a few years
Yes.
ago as well, and I did a Phantom trading card as
Yes.
well. Um, but no, I wouldn't have said no. So I think maybe they just forgot about me, or they just because I remember when I did the first cover, I thought, oh, this is awesome. I'm going to be doing Phantom covers, maybe a couple a year. That'll be awesome. I'll be stoked. And then I never heard back, and I just went, oh, maybe they hated it because I thought maybe it was too edgy. I thought, oh, maybe it's too designy. What have I done? Have I upset the readers? Did the readers not like it? And at the time, I didn't know about all the fan stuff. And I think I bumped into who did I bump into at a convention? This is after I did the first Phantom cover. Um, oh, I can't think of his name. He's a Phantom cover artist. Oh, I'm embarrassed now that I can't remember his name. Anyway, he said to me, he goes, "Oh, how come you haven't done any more covers?" And I said, "Because they haven't asked me." He goes, "Really?" He goes, "Oh, I'll talk to Glenn." And I went, "Oh, could you? That'd be awesome."
Is that
So,
Jamie Johnson? Jamie
Jamie. Oh
Johnson?
my God, of course it
Yeah.
was Jamie. Yes. Oh, sorry, Jamie. I could see his face. Yeah, it was Jamie. And Jamie said to me, "How come?" I said, I don't know. I thought maybe my cover was too edgy. I just kept thinking, oh, shouldn't have done that graphic designy cover now. Look, maybe they
You,
didn't
well, you
like
did
it.
it. You
Maybe it
did a
didn't suit.
Phantom with four arms and four legs.
I know. So no, I thought in my head, I thought, oh, this is so edgy. This is going to be cool. So they're going to notice me. And then it was just crickets. I was like, oh, didn't work. But nah, obviously they were busy doing covers and getting other artists and stuff. But yeah, then I finally did get asked again. And I just couldn't help myself, and I still did a graphic designy cover, but this time I didn't give the Phantom six arms or four arms and four legs. Um, I was really happy with that one. Actually, I've got that one here too, if you want to see it.
Ah,
Uh,
yes, please.
I've got it. Yes. And this one I actually I did on one big sheet of paper because I normally do it on two sheets. And that one took me a very long time, but thankfully they gave me a bit of time. Because
Yeah.
sometimes Glenn kind of, it's just they're running late and as publishing is the way things happen.
I really do
Yeah.
like that one. That
Yeah,
one,
I was happy with this one too.
that one, and probably 1969 are probably my two favorites. I really like the lady that you've drawn on there as well. I like, yeah, just you've got the bad guy in the middle as well, which
Yeah,
works
yeah.
really well.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with that one. And I was getting into a particular artist at that time, a Italian artist called Sergio Toppi. He's just if you've got any Phantom fans that are big fans of really cool black and white comics, which most of them probably are, they should look up Sergio Toppi. He's just a brilliant artist who they've reprinted a lot of his stuff in English. There's an English company. I can't remember the company, but you can find them. They're on Amazon. They're easy to find now. But yeah, I was like mimicking a lot of his ink style, and I was trying to kind of do my version of Sergio Toppi. It doesn't really look like Toppi, but that's what I was looking at the time, I guess.
So you made mention about your design background, how it's really influenced your art, your cover work and stuff like that. So when you get a file from Frew ring you up and say, "Hey, Marcelo, we need you to do a cover for this comic. Here's the comic, do a cover." What's your process? Do you read the comic first? What do you
Yep.
look for?
Um,
Uh, and just yeah,
yeah.
if you can just tell us a bit about that.
My process, well, basically, Glenn normally sends me a PDF of the story, and I read the story like a bunch of times. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll scan over the issue, and I try to look for the visual highlights, the things that stand out for me. And obviously the main things are the obvious things like the antagonist, um, the locations. And again, what I like about Phantom is like all these exotic locations, which is really cool. And I really appreciate that kind of stuff too. So I tend to look, okay, who's the antagonist? What are some high points that I might be able to feature on the cover or the wraparound? In some cases, I think that last issue I did along with the crocodile, that was two different stories. So I had to kind of show elements from two different stories and find the highlights from each one. Yeah, I guess that's my process. I tend to read it again, like any brief, you got to read it over and over before you even put, pencil to paper. It's like you've really got to really understand what the question is in a sense, by like in this case, not reading the question, but like reading the comic and like going through the highlights, looking at what the main visual things that I think stand out. Which version of the Phantom is too. Again, I wasn't a big Phantom fan growing up, so I didn't realize for the longest time I didn't realize there was like a bunch of Phantoms. They were, the son of Phantom, and this is really embarrassing. Your fans are probably going to have a laugh about this. I thought for the longest time that the Phantom was Australian because the Phantom was so popular here in Australia when I
Yeah,
was growing up, and I used to see he was even on TV. Like I remember
yeah.
there was he was on not
Paul
or that guy
Hogan.
Paul Hogan. Remember he used to dress up as I remember seeing that.
Yeah, yeah,
So for the longest time, I remember thinking, oh, he must have his adventures in far north Queensland, right?
yeah.
And I just for the longest time I just thought, oh, the Phantom's Australian. He must be Australian. I hadn't read a Phantom comic. And I just thought, oh, he must be Australian. So that's why he's
Mm.
so popular here. Yeah, but basically for me, the process, like, basically I see the highlights, any visual cues that I think are really strong. That was that. I can't remember the number of the issue, the one with the big gorilla monster on the front cover, um, where he's got the sword.
1955.
Yeah, where he's got the sword. So that was really cool. Like I really enjoyed that one because that was that medieval version of
Yeah.
the Phantom. And I really enjoyed that one too. So those elements, those medieval elements, which I thought were really, really cool to draw. And
Mm.
obviously a monster, like I'm a sucker for monsters. So like if there's a monster story, I'm thinking like, oh cool, I get to draw a big scary gorilla on the front cover and it's always great contrast when you got a monster and then a cute girl on the cover. So how can you go wrong? So it's all those things that appeal to readers and stuff. And then the Phantom, with a big sword. And I thought that for me that looked really cool because I thought, oh, I don't see the Phantom with a sword much. I don't think of the Phantom with a sword much. I always think of him with a gun, you
Yeah.
know, like normal Phantom. And I remember I did like the Phantom movie actually. I really liked the Phantom movie. Like, I guess most of your fans are just as disappointed that they didn't continue making them because I thought that was cool. Like I really liked it.
Mm.
Very Indiana
Mm.
Jonesy kind of a high adventure stuff. Mm.
Yeah. And then just recently you've drawn a story, one of Dean Rankin's stories for the Monster annual, which came out in early 2025. How did you
Yep.
get the gig for that one? What was your process
Oh,
for that?
well, I actually got in touch with Glenn because at the time, again, because I'm a freelancer, I'm a full-time freelancer. I teach workshops. I teach like drawing workshops that I organize myself. I also I do workshops for like schools and stuff, but it's all freelance gigs, so I don't have a full-time job. So everything I'm
Yeah.
always looking for work. Um, and this time I got in touch with Glenn because I could see I was looking at my calendar and I got a bit worried and I thought, oh man, I've got a big hole in my calendar where there's no work. And I was like really panicking and I thought, uh-oh. Um, and again, these things with freelance, that's why you tend to say yes to everything. Like like it either rains, it's either drought or feast or famine. That's what I was trying to say. So I could see a big hole in my schedule, and I got in touch with Glenn and actually Phantom, Julie Dietrich, because Julie, I'm,
Yes.
I'm good friends with Julie, and she and I have collaborated on some comic projects, and she's done some Phantom writing, and she knows a lot. I ask her Phantom questions, and she knows all the answers. It's awesome. So like Julie and I are mates, so the good thing too is because she knows more about the Phantom than I do, I'll ask her questions, and she just knows, and she can get the answers really quickly too.
Mm.
So, yeah, Julie actually mentioned to me that they're always looking for artists to do interiors, but again, I'm not a fast artist, and I know, and again, comics are a lot of labor for not that much money, but I thought, this would be a good time for me to do some interior stuff if I can get it. So I got in touch, and Glenn said, all right, let me have a look. and he sent me a script for a 5-part series, and I looked at it. I was like, "Oh, this is too long." I said, "I can't do this." I said, I could, but it'd take me too long." And I didn't, and it wasn't really my bag. I was reading, I was going, "Oh yeah, this is okay." And then he said, "All right." I said, "Have you got anything shorter, like a short story?" And he goes, "Yeah, I got something." So he said to me, "Let me get back to you." So I think a couple of days later, he sends me a script. And I was just like, oh, I loved it. Like the simplicity, the beauty of what Dean wrote. And
Yeah,
again,
it's got a
I,
monster.
yeah, and it's got a monster again. So that, I was like, oh my God. But the simplicity and the beauty of this little short story,
Hmm.
I was floored. I was so stoked. I thought this is totally my bag.
Dean's
Um,
written a few
yeah.
short stories, and they've really well received from a lot of fans. So yeah, he's I really enjoyed the story that you and Dean worked on.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, look, like again, I talk to Dean at shows. Like Dean and I aren't like close friends or anything, but I mean, I really love Dean's artwork and stuff, and we like send each other messages occasionally on Instagram and stuff. I sent him a message later on after I'd drawn the story because I actually said to Glenn, "Oh, should I get in touch with Dean?" And Glenn was like, "No, you don't have to. It's all right." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I loved it, and the great thing about Dean too, because I think it's because he's a illustrator artist, the way he wrote the script totally he knows, he obviously pictured it in his head quite clearly. So the way he wrote the script, um he actually did a few sketches for certain bits. um and I'm going to ask Dean's permission later on because I've always wanted to share some of Dean's little roughs that he did of the monster. And he did a rough in his style, which is cool. You know how Dean's got the hilarious style,
Yeah.
that kind of Simpson-y style that he draws in. And part of me was thinking, man, Dean, you could draw this whole thing and it'd still work in his style because the story was just so beautiful. The simplicity of the story was just, it was great. And I got to draw a crocodile, and I got to draw all this cool stuff, and the story about, finding the little girl. Yeah, I loved it. I was just so pleased, and I was remember thinking I really want to do a good job on this. Like I really, again, sadly I drew it the whole thing digitally, but I had to draw digitally again because deadline restraints, and I can move faster digitally too, so I can draw a lot faster when I draw digitally. But I wanted it to have a certain look as well, and I was really pleased. And with
Hmm.
Dean's, because like I said, Dean had sent a few sketches with the script, and that really helped give me a few ideas and put things in a certain perspective that Dean wanted. And later on, I did get in touch with Dean and I emailed. I said, "Dean, if you've got another cool story like that, I would love to draw it. Like, I'd definitely be up for like a short story like that, even if it was slightly longer. If it was 6 pages or 8 pages. That I love that kind of stuff. Like that really has a lot of appeal for me. I like it. Almost felt like it almost had like a mythic quality, almost like a fairy tale kind of thing. Those
Yeah.
kind of stories appealed to me. Again, because I
Yeah.
think I'm also a big Hellboy fan. So it kind of, to me, I was in my head, I kind of felt like, yeah, it had that kind of feel. And yeah, it was cool. And I'm so glad you guys really seemed to like it, which was really cool. So I hope the fans really got into it as well. But yeah, look, it's mostly Dean's, like, it was Dean's story. Like, honestly, I just followed what Dean told me to do and try to just draw the heck out of it and make it look cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was
So
really good.
did you do it in
Dean,
color or
write
did
me
you
another
do it
cool one.
in?
I'll definitely draw it. No, no, I did it in black and white. I did it all in black and white, specific, but it was mainly for time
Yeah.
because again, I think if I did it in color, I wouldn't have made the deadline because they gave me a certain amount of time, and I thought, all right, I'll do this in black and white. But you know what? If they ever reprint it and they want me to color it, I could definitely color it.
Hmm.
I'd definitely splash a bit of color on it, make it look. But I designed it so it would hopefully work really well in black and white too, because I read a lot of black and white comics too. I appreciate the strength of, standalone comics that just work in black and white that don't need. And that was a bit of a challenge as well for me too, because I thought, all right, I want to make this look good in black and white. But yeah, yeah. Again, mostly for time. I think if I
Yeah.
had time, I probably may have done it in color, but I wouldn't have made the deadline.
Yeah. So you are open to do more short stories like that down the track?
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, yeah. And if they're, I'd love to work with Dean again because again, I think and I have read some of Dean's other short stories, the Phantom one. I read that one that I think was it Jeremy McPherson drew one or that story of that where he jumps out of a plane and he
Yeah,
rescues a you don't
a
realize
baby
what it is, but it's
rhino.
in the
Yeah,
a baby
the
rhino. Yeah.
box.
Again, like that. Yeah, that was cool. Like that was
That's the
and
one
the cool
without
thing is see I no
any. There's no speech bubbles
there's
or
no
anything like that.
there's
Yeah.
no dialogue. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So that was cool. That appealed to me a lot as well. But I loved see, I'm a big fan of Jeremy's. I've known Jeremy on and off for years, and his work's improved like in leaps and bounds.
Hmm.
Jeremy's work, and when he started doing Phantom covers, when I started doing Phantom covers, I think I saw him at a show where it could have been at the Frew crew thing, and I saw him, and I hadn't seen him for such a long time. And then I put two and two together and I said, "Oh my God, Jeremy, like they're your covers. Like your stuff's looking amazing." He goes, "Oh, thanks." I said, "No, man, seriously, like they look really good." Like I just remember looking at some of his early work in the 90s. He was because he's a lot younger than me, and I remember seeing some of his work thinking, "Oh, this kid's got a lot of potential." And he worked with a friend of mine on some indie comic thing, and I remember looking at his stuff even back then thinking, "Oh, this kid's, he's got a lot of potential." But and it had been that long since I'd seen him. And then I saw his Phantom work and I was like, it just blew my mind. His stuff it was perfect for Phantom. Like I
Yeah.
find his work really works well. Yeah. So yeah,
Mm.
that was cool. That was really cool. And again, I'd love to do another story with Dean. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It'd be cool.
No worries. Well, look, really enjoy your time today. Before we do wrap up and all that, just want to ask a couple of quick fire questions. So, where can people find you? Where can they follow you on social media or your website and stuff like that? Could you just let us know about that?
Yeah, sure. I'm mostly on Instagram at Marcelo Draws Instagram. And I'm on Facebook, Marcelo Baez Comic Workshops. That's basically promoting I teach a lot of kids drawing, kids workshops. I think.
With the art classes, I did have that down. You've talked a little bit about that. These are for what, high school kids, preteen, like tweens, like what,
A
like
bit of everything.
yeah,
I teach regular workshops here in the Wollongong area, Mondays and Wednesdays. So Mondays I do the younger kids classes starting from 8-year olds to 14-year-olds. And then I do have a senior class on Wednesday afternoons after school. So they're during the term, school terms. I get a lot of bookings. I have a booking agent now, which is fantastic, like a speaker's agent. I've only been with them for about a year, so I do talks and workshops at schools, high schools, primary schools. I've also done corporate workshops as well and stuff like that. It's pretty much anyone that wants to hire me to come in to do a talk. I've done a talk at a place where there was 500 people, teaching them to draw and stuff for adults at a corporation. So I do shows. Yeah, I can teach you to draw. I can teach anyone to draw like Picasso.
oh, sounds
Anyone,
good. No worries.
even
And
you.
um, and you made mention that your original Phantom covers. So from what I understand, there's four that you've got the original art for that they are available for sale, but you got to pry them away from you, so you got to be willing to pay up. You're not just going to give them away for free.
Yep.
And what's the best
Yeah.
way
Yep.
for people to
Yeah.
contact you for that?
Yeah. No, like, yeah, I'm willing to sell them. Be
Gram?
through my Instagram, again, through Marcelo Draws. I also I have a website too, marcelobaez.com, where my folio's on there. There's a few links to a few other things. But I spend most of my time on Instagram in terms of social media.
Yep.
I don't spend that much time on Facebook. So for anyone, don't get in touch with me on Facebook because I rarely check my Facebook. I treat Facebook like a job, so I don't like to go there much. But
Fair
I'm on
enough.
Instagram a lot, so or you can email me direct, Marcelo Draws. Yeah, Marcelo Draws at Gmail. Um, yeah, I tend to reply to people pretty quickly on Instagram. Yeah.
Yep. And
And I'm
you're
actually working on a
available.
Phantom cover now.
Oh, okay. You got any
I've
progress
got
to
a
be
new
able to
one.
show us?
Yeah, yeah, I'll show you a tiny bit. I can show you a tiny bit. I'll cover up a little bit of it. Hang on.
Sounds good.
I'll show you a bit of the back cover. It's a wraparound. All right, that's a little bit. It's nearly finished.
Oh,
It's
so
nearly
we've got,
finished.
for those on audio only,
So
you've got
that's
Devil
a
ripping
bit of the
into an
back.
arm, and then you've got a dark, mysterious
Yes.
gentleman.
The interior. I look. What's the horse's name?
Hero.
I'm a terrible Phantom fan. Hero.
Awesome.
And yeah. Um, but yeah. So that's one I've got on at the moment, and I've just scanned that into the computer. So I'll be working on colors tonight and tomorrow. Yeah. So this is the new one. And again, I've tried to do things. I'm trying to do things differently every time. So hopefully I'm not getting too repetitive with my graphic design stuff. But yeah, so that's a bit of a preview. And then
Awesome.
people, I'm not sure what the number of the issue is. The interior art is really nice. I can't remember the name of the artist, but I think the fans are really going to like it. It looks really cool. Yeah, it looks really nice.
Awesome. And do you have any conventions booked for
So
2025?
that's yeah. So I have been working on the Phantom.
Awesome.
Yes, I do. I've got quite a few actually. This year I've what have I got? I've got the Comic Gong show, which is in the Wollongong one. I've got one coming up at Goulburn. I'll be in Goulburn for in the next 2 weeks. I can't remember the name of it, but I got one in Goulburn, then I got one in Canberra. I'm not sure if I'm doing Oz Comic Con, but hopefully I am. So possibly Oz Comic Con, but I've got one in Goulburn, Canberra. Wollongong. There's another one, but I can't remember right now. But if people want to follow me on Instagram, I tend to update things pretty regularly and make announcements pretty often, like quite often on Instagram. So
Look, really appreciate your time. We've had some internet difficulties with this podcast, so I apologize what the quality is going to be like and for your patience. I appreciate for your patience, Marcelo.
that's all right. That's all right.
Now, thank you for listening and watching us. Our website is chroniclechamber.com and our email is chroniclechamber@gmail.com. We would love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, and opinions on our social media platforms or over at our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to us via YouTube or through your favorite podcast apps, including iTunes and or Spotify. Thank you. Please get in contact with us. And as always, happy fansmith.
The ghost who walks. The phantom. Enemies beware. The phantom's always there, but you won't find the phantom. He finds you.